good afternoon, and good evening to you. My name is Dayzee, and you're listening to my secret podcast on this beautiful, beautiful Friday. Happy, happy Friday to you. Oh my goodness, we are back, finally. It's been a whole week already. Jeez, I'm very happy you're here. I'm very happy to be here. And oh my goodness, I hope you are ready for some content today, because we are going in deep into a discussion about human psychology, philosophy, human behavior, greed, all that jazz, all the good stuff. Because today we're taking a look into one of my favorite books that I have read this year. We are talking about a character from The Idiot by Dostoevsky. I hope you're ready. I'm ready. I am so excited about this. I've been wanting to talk about this book for so long. Oh my god, I want to talk about this so much. I have been planning on talking about this book ever since I started this podcast, and I am just so excited. I just want to get right into it. Should we get into it? I think we should get into it. Let's go. I have tried reading Dostoevsky a couple of times before. First, I tried reading The Brothers Karamazov, and I suppose it was a bit ambitious to start off with his thickest and most profound novel. I mean, I still have it on my shelf, but it's definitely one of those books that I'm not going to finish within a year. I just feel like it's one of those books that deserve the time and effort you put into it. I just want to put in the time and effort that the book deserves, basically. So I might finish it in a couple of years. that was my main point to that. But then I tried listening to Crime and Punishment on audiobook, and I mean, to be fair, I didn't really give it a fair try. I kept zoning out. That's usually what happens with me in audiobooks, to be fair. I do tend to get a bit distracted listening to audiobooks, because I tend to listen to audiobooks while I'm doing other stuff. So sometimes I would just be... I know Dostoevsky rambles a lot. Sometimes not a whole lot is going on. But I don't know. I just feel like his books are so compact and so full of stuff to analyze and stuff to talk about, and I just feel like I wasn't really paying as much attention to it as I should. So later on, I got a physical copy of it, and I am going to read it someday soon. I do expect to read it someday soon. But then, very unexpectedly, about a month ago, I had this impulse to get a cheap physical copy of The Idiot. You know, something in me just said, girl, just grab it and come with me. And I'm going to get very close to the microphone now, because when I tell you that I have been obsessed with this book for the past month, I'm not kidding. I have reread the book. I have considered getting multiple translations. I have listened to the audiobook. I have even watched the film adaptation from 1958. Yeah. So, needless to say, I have been really obsessed with this book, and I just feel like I want to talk about it. I don't know who to talk about it to, though, because I don't know how many people have actually read The Idiot. I know it's like a title I've heard from my childhood before. Like, I have heard the title, The Idiot by Dostoevsky, many times before, but I never knew what it was about. And I had no idea that I would be this obsessed with it. So, I don't have all the time in the world, of course, unfortunately, to talk about this book. I feel like I could talk about it for hours if I had the time, but I don't. We have about 25 minutes with this podcast. So for today's topic, I'm just going to give you some plot points that will give you somewhat an idea of what this is about, where we are in the story, and what's going on. I wrote a little summary. I'm going to read it right now, out loud, and it's gonna give you like the essential information that you need for this discussion, I guess. So here we go. Mishkin is a young man who returns to Russia after a stay in Switzerland. He has nowhere to go, but he manages to charm the pants off a general that suggests he stays at the Evulgence, a somewhat poor family that openly takes in tenants. Among these family members, we are first introduced to Ganya, a young man who plans to marry a woman, not out of love, but out of financial gain. He has been promised a handsome sum of money, the today's equivalent of $60,000, but only if he agrees to marry the biggest drama queen of the novel, Nastasya Filipovna. I hope you can sense the absolute drama that unfolds. You can probably already smell it. Anyway, Ganya. Oh boy. Ganya is a very interesting character, and he's going to be the main focus of this episode when we start talking about the desire for originality and the desire to be original. I'll be very transparent. I didn't like Ganya at first, especially after what he does to my boy Mishkin. Ugh, poor little soul. But to be fair, a lot of characters in this book are assholes in their own way. So, which is a point we're going to get to right now. My original point was that when I finished the book and I was thinking back on the plot and the characters and the conflicts of the book, for some reason, Ganya kept popping up in my head. Like, Ganya is mostly in the first part of the book, as far as I remember. Yeah, he is a very central character in the first part of the book. And then he kind of returns in the fourth part of the book. And that's because Dostoevsky takes a bit of time to discuss something that is really on his mind, and something that I'm guessing has been on Dostoevsky's mind throughout most of his life as an author. Let me tell you about it. In part 4 of the book, Dostoevsky steps out of the narration, basically, and he tends to do that a lot, actually. He steps out of the narration and he starts talking about the struggles of writing about ordinary people. And that is so funny to me. It's a point in the book that I've come back to many times, and it's because it's one of those moments in the book where I truly felt like I understood what Dostoevsky was trying to say. Trust me, if you think I've understood Dostoevsky 100% after reading The Idiot, I'm about to tell you. There's still a lot of stuff that puzzles me about this guy, but I feel like for the most part, I understand what he says, what he's trying to point out. Especially with this point about ordinary versus originality. That point has really stayed in my mind. So, he points out that ordinary people in fiction are actually super important to include, because ordinary people represent a sense of truth. Specifically, in the book, he says, and I quote, "If we leave commonplace people out, we lose all semblance of truth. To fill a novel completely with types, or, more simply, to make it interesting with strange and incredible characters, would be to make it unreal and even uninteresting. To our thinking, a writer ought to seek out interesting and instructive features even among commonplace people." This is such an ironic statement, though, because, I mean, what he's saying is that we should really, as authors, as writers, as a writer myself, as authors and writers, we ought to focus more on ordinary people, because if we just fill our novels full of people that are extraordinary and incredible, like, you know, who is going to relate to that? You know, there is a sense of truth and realism in including people that are just very ordinary. Dostoevsky loves to include real people in his novels because he is very fascinated with the flaws of an ordinary man. He always focuses on the ugly sides of humanity, anything from demons to the brothers Karamazov. Real humans are so complex Real humans are not perfect. They are anything but perfect. They're full of greed. They're full of murderous intentions. They're full of ulterior motives, especially in this circle of society that he's portraying in The Idiot. People are constantly scheming against one another. People are always trying to get richer. People are always trying to get up in ranks, trying to gain respect. They're all trying their best to become what they want to become, but it's not always done in a very Christian way, so to speak. And you can definitely tell that Dostoevsky loves to talk about religion. He loves to talk about Christianity versus nihilism. As far as my research goes, I get the idea that Russia at this point in time during the 19th century was a bit challenged by reforms and the uprising of nihilism in Russia. And yeah, where was I going with this? I don't remember. Oh yeah, I wanted to say that it's kind of ironic how Dostoevsky, after saying this, he says that including strange and incredible characters makes a story unreal and uninteresting. That is so ironic when you consider the fact that his main character of The Idiot is pretty otherworldly. I mean, Mishkin. Oh my god. Mishkin. Mishkin is amazing. Like, I will be honest with you. I mean, some people find Mishkin annoying. I love him. I am so in love with Mishkin, and I was in love with him from the very beginning. Like, oh my god, he is... Okay, so for anyone who don't know who Mishkin is, let me just tell you. Mishkin is a puppy dog. He's this beautiful, beautiful, tall man with big eyes and a little beard on his chin. He has this golden hair. That's just his appearance, though. Like, in behavior, Mishkin is a puppy dog. Like, no joke. If Mishkin was an animal, he would be a golden retriever. He is so loving, caring. He forgives you in an instant. Even if you try and kill him, he won't hold it against you. Like, there is not one bad bone in him. Like, he's amazing. So it's just funny how, like, when you have a guy who is so good, this otherworldly version of a good person, he is essentially a good person. You can say that he is, if you believe in Christianity and if you believe in Jesus Christ, you would probably say that he is very Christ-like, or maybe you wouldn't say he's Christ-like. I don't know. I mean, is it blasphemous to compare a simple human being to Christ? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. But he is very much trying to be like a Christ-like person. I mean, that is very obvious. Like, Dostoevsky, that was his intention. That was Dostoevsky's intention from the very beginning. Mishkin is supposed to be very Christ-like. But Mishkin is also very naive sometimes. And that's when he sits down with Ganya. And Ganya, I don't remember, I'll be honest. I'm not sure what Ganya says to Mishkin, but I'm pretty sure Ganya, he's like sitting and he's full of remorse for what he's done, and to Mishkin, that is, to what he's done to Mishkin. And of course, Mishkin forgives him for what he's done to him. And Ganya sits down and he's like, "You must think so bad of me," or something. I don't remember. The point is, Mishkin sits down and he basically says, he says to Ganya, "You're pretty basic, dude." I mean, he doesn't use those words. He says that Ganya is a very ordinary man, and he might be the most ordinary man he's ever met. And he doesn't realize how Ganya might interpret that. But Ganya, he is furious. Like, being called ordinary, being called a basic bitch, sends him off the edge. He despises the concept of being a basic bitch, aka an ordinary man. And I know if you haven't read the novel, you're probably thinking, why is he so against that? Why would he be offended by that? I don't know. You tell me in the comments or tell me in a DM what you think. But yeah, he's really offended by that. Like, he's like, I'm not a basic bitch. No. Basically, after being called ordinary by Mishkin, Ganya starts a rant. Or, well, not really a rant, but he starts talking about his mission in life and why he wants to marry Nastasya Filipovna for the money. He says that he has one mission in life. He wants to be rich, essentially. And I know that might not sound like a bad idea at first. Making money and getting rich, I mean, it's hardly a new idea. You know, everyone wants to make money. Everyone wants to get rich in theory, you know. It's not inherently a bad goal to have in life. A lot of people want to have money. But it's just the way that Ganya talks about it that rubs me the wrong way. Like, it's kind of uncomfortable. He mentions his brother-in-law who at 17 slept in the streets and basically had nothing. And now he has, like, I don't know, 60,000 rubles or something. Like, basically his brother-in-law started with nothing, and then years later he is considered wealthy and rich. And Ganya says that he's going to step over all the hard work and get the money, get that, like, what is that, like $60,000, the equivalent of $60,000, just by marrying a woman that he doesn't love. And he knows that she doesn't love him, but he is so focused on getting that money that he even sits there in front of Mishkin and says, yeah, she will love me. I will learn to love her. We will be happy. Like, he's so laser focused on getting that money and getting that wealth, getting so wealthy and rich. And you're thinking, okay, but what is he going to do with that money then? You know, what is he going to do? Is he just going to, you know, flounder around and and show off how wealthy he is? Well, that's the thing. Ganya insists that he's going to be considered the king of Jews. That's not a joke. He literally says in the book that when he has the money, he wants to appear like this humble person. He has intentions of walking around and looking like Jesus Christ in front of everyone. It is so weird. It is so delusional, and it's so out of touch. It's so weird. Let me find the place in the book, actually. Let me just see what he actually says. He says, in 15 years, people will say, there goes Ivolgin, the king of the Jews. You tell me I am not an original person. Observe, dear prince, that's Mishkin, that nothing offends a man of our day and our race more than to tell him that he is not original, that he is weak-willed, has no particular talents, and is an ordinary person. I feel like that statement is one of the statements that essentially tells you the very essence of who Ganya is. He's this guy who comes from, I mean, he doesn't even come from that poor, like too poor of a family. I mean, they're not starving, you know, they have a maid and obviously they have tenants and they get some money through that, I guess, maybe. You can sense that they are not struggling in any way, but he wants that money, he wants that wealth. He's actually really embarrassed about the family having tenants. Like, that is embarrassing to him. Like, that's like a spot on his pride that his family is taking in tenants. They have reached the point of having to take in tenants. He finds that so embarrassing. It's incredible. It's really incredible. I mean, Mishkin is one of those tenants at this moment in the novel. It makes me want to discuss what it means to be great, you know, because when you initially hear about Ganya's intentions of, like, when he gets the money, he wants to be preserved as great. I mean, what does it mean to be great exactly? That is such an interesting discussion. You can obviously look it up in the dictionary and see what, the word great means. But what does it actually mean to be great in someone's eyes? It goes back to this whole discussion of focusing on ordinary people rather than the original people. It's also important to understand the definition of ordinary and original in this context. Ganya, in his perspective, he sees ordinary people as weak-willed with no particular talents, right? And original people are people who are considered great, people who are influential and people who stand out, people who are like above the average, right? I mean, it sounds like he wants to achieve with this money a status that is above everyone else. I mean, who the fuck wants to be compared to Jesus Christ like that? that is just so off-putting. It's kind of disgusting, to be honest. Like, how big of an ego do you have to want to be considered that great? That is so warped. That is so warped. Anyway, I want to go back to Dostoevsky's discussion about ordinary and original and like the focus on ordinary people, because it kind of reminds me, funny enough, it reminds me of a movie. It reminds me of a moment in, if you've seen Amadeus, you know that there is a moment in Amadeus where Mozart stands in front of the court of the emperor and he's forced to tell about his new opera that takes place in a harem, and the court is like astounded. Like they're baffled, because how can you do that? That is so inappropriate. Why would you set your opera in a harem? That like, and Mozart sits there like, well, it's charming. It's not indecent. And later on, when he has to justify his adaptation of The Marriage of Figaro, he also has to defend his stance on portraying ordinary people.
Mozart, music is not the issue here. No one doubts your talent. It's your judgment of literature that's in question. Surely you can choose more elevated themes.
Oh, elevated. What does that mean, elevated? I am fed to the teeth with all of these elevated things, old dead legends. Why must we go on forever, writing only about gods and legends? Bello, come on now, be honest. Which one of you wouldn't rather listen to his hairdresser than Hercules? Or Horatius, or Orpheus, people so lofty they sound as if they shit marble.
And, I mean, if you watch the movie, you know that Mozart's argument is the following: why do we keep making operas about gods and about legends? Like, who the hell is gonna watch that? Who's gonna want to watch that? People can't relate. The common folk can't relate. Why do we keep doing it? And I mean, it reminds me of that, because it's the same discussion of the importance of keeping the real shit, the real aspects of human being in a story. I've already mentioned it before, but Dostoevsky loves to focus on the real humans. Like, as I said, I haven't read Crime and Punishment yet, but I do know that book also focuses on the ugly sides of humans. It has a main character that is so desperate. He is knees deep in shit. And he is pushed to the point of murder for money, Dostoevsky, of course, he focuses on these human beings because he wants us to observe and explore the ugly sides of human beings. He wants to put emphasis on how imperfect we are, but how good we can be if we choose to be. I mean, we have Mishkin, who is just inherently a good person. He can't help it. Like, he can't help it. There's a point in the book where there is this guy who says that he is entitled to some of Mishkin's money. And then they find out that he is actually not entitled to have any of Mishkin's money. But Mishkin gives him money anyway, because he's just that good of a person. It's a whole other story to discuss. If you want me to tell you about that, if you want me to discuss that point of the book, that's also an interesting part in the book that I would love to talk about in another episode, if you want to hear about it. But anyway, so what is it about a person that makes them want to be original, in Dostoevsky's own words? If I were to use my own words, I would probably use a word like great. Like, what is it about the concept of greatness that is so attractive to people? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I'm guessing that Dostoevsky's answer would probably be a sense of greed. Maybe. I mean, I'm only talking from his Christian perspective, because it is very obvious that he finds a perfect person to be this perfect Christian that Mishkin represents. And I mean, Mishkin is surrounded by people who are corrupt most of the time. People who are corrupt, but that's not to say that there's just bad people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that characters in this book represent real people, in the sense that there are no good people and there are no inherently bad people, if that makes sense. I mean, you could maybe take Rogozhin as an exception, maybe. I don't know. Rogozhin is a whole other character. That is also like an interesting point to talk about. But there are no inherently bad or good people in this book, just like in real life. People are not just plainly bad or plainly good. The world is very gray in that sense. And that's why you can't really, in Dostoevsky's books, you can't really hate characters completely. I said in the beginning of this podcast, I really didn't like Ganya in the beginning. I thought he was an egocentric asshole. I think at some point in the book, actually, I wrote down, "Shut the fuck up, Ganya, you egocentric bitch," or something. I don't know what I wrote down. Because I was just so furious with him. I was angry with him. The way he was so focused on appearances, and he's such a vain man. But you know, after finishing the book, I am willing to, consider him to be maybe just really desperate to feel approval. And sometimes if you're really desperate to be approved and get approval, you can sometimes be pushed to do incredible things. Maybe even very immoral things. In Mishkin's eyes, and in Dostoevsky's ideal Christianity eyes, the whole idea of marrying someone for money is offensive, right? And I mean, that was not even the worst thing. That was not what I in particular disliked about Ganya, but it's just the whole... He's so focused on the appearance of being great. He wants to be perceived as more than average. And even more than that, he wants to be perceived as fucking Jesus Christ, King of Jews, right? It's crazy when someone is so hungry to be great. I can't relate to it. Or is that a lie? I think a lot of people like to be something nowadays. Everyone wants to be considered great. Everyone wants to be considered something because they see an opportunity for it. It's very easy to be perceived as something greater than you actually are. And that's, it just goes to show that there are so many people on the internet that wants to be perceived as a lot greater than they actually are. It's also so easy to manipulate your image online, and it's easier to be perceived greater than you are in this time and age we're living in. I would really love to continue the discussion with anyone who is willing to talk to me about it. I love talking about these characters, and I would gladly talk about another character another time if that is of interest to anyone. Before I officially end this podcast, I just wanted to point out another character I've come across in media pretty recently that also wants to be great. If you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend a Netflix show called Blue Samurai. In Blue Samurai, there is a character called Ringo. He's kind of like a sidekick to the main character. Ringo was born without hands, but he manages to get as much out of life as possible, even though he has a handicap. And he has, in the beginning of the show, he has this goal of being great. Like, that's what he says. He wants to be great. His version of being great is so different from someone like Ganya. There is even like a character in the show that has the same goal of being great, but his perception of greatness is very different from Ringo's perception of greatness. When Ringo talks about being great, he mentions the importance of being his master's or his sensei's helper. He knows that with his condition, he is not able to achieve the same kind of greatness as his master. But that doesn't stop him from becoming another type of great. He tells himself that instead of being the type of great that his master is trying to achieve, he can help greatness. In that sense, he can help greatness. He can help his master achieve greatness. And in that sense, that is his own way of achieving a status of greatness, by helping someone. He achieves his own sense of greatness by helping someone achieve their perception of greatness. And that is such a beautiful, beautiful ideology that I feel like Ganya should probably try and listen to. That's a philosophy that I feel Ganya could get something out of, but I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this podcast today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it made you reflect on human behavior and your own perception of greatness. I think that we can all get something out of talking about what it means to be great. We don't all have to achieve the same things in life as other people do. Sometimes we can just sit down and enjoy our glass of wine. I don't know why that is like a symbolism that keeps popping up, but sometimes, it's great to just consider your own life to be great and your own position in life to be a great one. Sometimes it's good to reflect on what our own perception of what it means to be great is. And it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be status. It doesn't have to be anything. You can be whoever you want to be. And you shouldn't let social norms unless you want to kill someone. Don't kill someone, please. Don't be an asshole, all right? But you can be great in your own way. You know, if being great is about helping people, then do that. And if it's about being rich, then do that. But don't be an asshole. Please don't be an asshole. All right? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope most of it made sense. I've already taken way too much of your time, so I will let go of you. And again, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Follow me on Spotify, follow the podcast on Spotify, leave a like on the YouTube video, give me a comment, tell me what you think about Ganya, tell me what you think about greatness. Have you read The Idiot? Please DM me, I need someone to talk to about the book. Alright guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.